So there seems to be a lot of confusion about what the occult is exactly anyway. So I wanted to dedicate an entire video and talk at length about what this subject actually is, or at least what it means to me. I think it's worth dedicating at least a good amount of time to unpacking this really quite a loaded term. So let's get to it. So the word occult, first of all, it's a very charged sort of word, and it carries a lot of weight and often some negative connotations. So already, right from the beginning, when you hear this word, you can't help but be made to think of certain things or feel a certain way. So in and of itself, occult as a word is, well, it's just that. It's just a word. And a word with, of course, great power, apparently, which can cause all sorts of responses depending on your background, what you've been told, what you believe about what you've been told, or what you've discovered for yourself. Occult or occultus, coming from the Latin, simply means hidden, concealed, or secret. Now, digging a little deeper, it refers to the invisible forces which presumably govern the physical world. At least that's the general presumption that I think we can start with and agree on, in addition to the fact that occultus or occult simply refers to something which is hidden, concealed, or secret. So, like, for example, in a very real sense, electromagnetism could be considered occulted. And most certainly gravity, which is one of the biggest mysteries of science that we know of today. And of course, occult has, so going further into that idea of something being hidden or secret or mysterious and unknown, yet influencing the physical world, that leads us to the supernatural or the otherworldly connotations, as it's often associated with the term occult. So we're talking about, of course, the spirit world, the realm where demons hang out, and other such things that are generally or can be considered having to do with the forces of darkness, evil, that sort of thing. And strictly from a human nature perspective, we tend not to trust anything we cannot understand. That has to do directly with our own survival. So that's very instinctual. So something we cannot see is something we cannot generally understand very well. And so therefore, it's not to be trusted. That's a very understandable instinct to have. And it keeps us safe and it keeps us alive. So it makes perfect sense. And so the supernatural world, including the mind of God, must by definition exist beyond mere human comprehension. So this occulted world, or this world of the unseen, this mysterious world, lies beyond the physical realm, lies beyond what we can see, what we can measure, what we can detect with our five senses. And so anything beyond the realm of our five senses, we're getting into, woo-woo land. We're getting into the mystery. We're getting into spirituality. And that sort of thing in this day and age makes a lot of people uncomfortable, whether you believe in God, whether you're an atheist, whether, regardless of what you believe, anything that can't be seen directly, empirically measured, that sort of thing. In this day and age, this information society that we live in makes people highly uncomfortable. And so those desiring to be in contact with, so now I'm going to talk about people that are embracing the occult for a moment. So those that desire to be in contact with these occult forces and control these incomprehensible fields or forces which govern our physical world, or at least we presume they do so. The general sense is people like that do so out of their own selfish motivations. Which again, of course, is a valid idea, and it makes a lot of sense. So aside from the occult being used quite often and quite widely in popular culture as just really a source of free material for horror movies, This sort of open source framework for spirituality that we could refer to as the occult has been really defiled by many who just seek to exploit it and put their own egoic stamp all over it, whether it be just using the occult sources to make a movie or write a book or even just start a new religion, right? So just understand that occulted knowledge is merely a starting point, or more like it's like training wheels. You could say the same thing about any organized religion in a sense, and I'll get into that later. Don't be, try not to be offended. Just hear me out here. It'll make more sense. I'm not anti-religion. So until one may realize their own operative theology, which is basically that means to come into contact with your own spiritual sense of the world, your own spirituality, or a personal relationship with God, there are a lot of there's a lot of material that's been written about the occult from some certain person's perspective. So you'll always be, when you look into different occult concepts or writings, books, etc., you're always going to get someone else's version. So it's been translated for you. Someone's direct experience is being presented for you. The nice thing about occult wisdom is that, and really the real gold of occult knowledge is firsthand experience. So because we're talking about the transcendent or supernatural realm that is incomprehensible and cannot really be readily defined in words, it's the sort of thing, it's like the Matrix, right? You can't really be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself, okay? Now, I also realize that God is quite a loaded term as well, which comes with a lot of baggage for people. And now the key here is to understand that these terms, occult, God, whatever, they are truly undefinable. Okay, so instead of these words having a specific meaning, you have to understand that meaning is just what your interpretation is, what you're bringing. It's what comes to mind based on your experience or what you've been told. But it's only an approximation at best, okay? So the key to understanding these terms is that they're truly undefinable, but instead they only point to something that's very broad and approximate, right? Hence the varying degrees of interpretation everyone has when they hear the word occult or God. You'll invariably see different reactions or different responses from different people because there isn't one specific. There are people, of course, that will insist there's only one true God and it's this way, but they're obviously wrong and delusional. So as many things, however, the nuance is lost on most people when we're talking about words and meaning, and especially in terms of, the esoteric or the occult or the realm of spirit, which is immeasurable and also to a very large degree incomprehensible. So despite whatever image that comes to your mind when you hear the word occult, it means you have created an idol in your mind which rules over your understanding. So just let that sink in for a moment. Now, at least to me, the word occult is it's generally pointing at something in an approximate way, but it has no exact association with any one thing. It has no precise meaning. No words do, actually. And it really doesn't really point to any specific practice or image. And so, for example, when I say God, again, it's just merely a pointer to an approximate idea, but the exact thing that God is remains incomprehensible to the human mind. Okay, so the same thing is true for the occult. So then, if the occult is such a broad, sort of approximate term, is the occult evil? That's a very good question to ask. But the question of good or evil has to do with intention in the human sense anyway. So nature, which is thought to be operating on instinct, or more accurately, a lower level of awareness, which is neither good nor evil. It just is, right? We recognize that nature is the way it is. A female wolf who wants to feed her pups, that devours a den of kits, or kittens, which are actually baby rabbits. That's not seen as an act of evil. And according to some people, they would think, well, it's because this animal doesn't have sentience. It's not right. But in an objective sense, that's to be debated. But we're not, there is no inherent good or evil in nature. And so if we extrapolate that to existence, and I'm not, trust me, I'm not a solipsist by any means, so don't get it confused here. However, in the human realm, it's our intentions behind a certain act, which is what we determine if something is good or evil in our minds. Okay? So if I study occult science because I hope to, let's say I want to manipulate and control people, then yes, the occult is being used for evil. However, if I wish to study occult science because I want to explore and better understand the inner dimensions of my spirit with the intention of improving my life and positively affecting those around me, then the occult is used for good. So in this sense, the occult is you could say, is really a neutral body of spiritual knowledge. It's an open source repository of spirituality. And overall, it remains neutral. So anything really in this world or any concept about the other world, if you like, remains neutral until there is some sort of human intention applied to it. So have people with evil or completely self-serving intentions authored occulted works? Of course they have. And you could also ask the other question, have people with good intentions authored occulted works for the betterment of humanity? Of course they have as well. I would cite Carl Jung as being one prime example of that. Now, I have no desires to, summon demons and, have them do my bidding and that sort of thing. That to me, that's just kind of nonsense. I think this particular interpretation of the occult that comes from the grimoires of the Renaissance period or before that time is rather childish in my estimation. That's just my perspective, of course. I'm not condemning anyone. Also, my understanding of what a demon may be isn't so limited as maybe how the church may view it, or how many maybe bubblegum occultists may see it. It sounds like an exciting idea when it's presented through like Hollywood, the Hollywood version. But if we're talking about the supernatural, again, we're talking about the incomprehensible. And so to limit it to some form in physicality that we can understand as human beings is to really make it a one-dimensional sort of flat thing. And it really just makes whatever this incomprehensible, mysterious thing is, and it reduces it to something that's essentially meaningless. So the kind of occultists who are in love with surface level appearances, I'll just say there's nothing wrong with that, so long as you find yourself going deeper, because we all have to have a starting point. So there's no judgment or condemnation here. Sadly, many really go no further than the level of appearances or surface level understanding, and a lot just eventually move on to some other shiny object. So the real value with occult study is to gain an intimate understanding and try to work towards mastery. Of course, total mastery is probably never achieved in this lifetime for 99.9% of us, but that's kind of the goal, right? And you want to have a goal for yourself to gain a high level understanding of the inner dimensions of the self, and try to shoot for this sort of mastery. Knowing, of course, we are just mortals and we're not perfect and we're never going to achieve that necessarily. Now, for me, Carl Jung was the gateway to occult study. Once I learned that Carl Jung derived a lot of his incredibly insightful and beneficial work in psychology from studying the occult and being very interested in occult wisdom, then I thought, well, gosh, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about some man who has some evil plot to, destroy the world or control people or whatever? No, we're talking about a psychologist with a deep interest in exploring life and helping others. So that for me, that was a long time ago. But for me, that really encouraged me to look into that for myself, in that spirit, though, in the spirit of Carl Jung, of self-improvement and helping myself, and hoping that I can influence and help others, right? So along those lines, you may have heard of shadow work, or of the deep exploration of the self, the psyche, dreams, and that sort of thing. So that's all very much under the umbrella of occult science or occult wisdom. And so to know thyself is to be honest, to be compassionate, and loving with oneself. And after all, we cannot truly be kind to others if we are not kind to ourselves. Some may fool themselves into this backwards way of thinking that they're a good person who suffers greatly if only others treated you well, but it is the lack of a deep spiritual understanding of the self that really is holding a lot of people back, in my estimation. And beliefs are secondhand. So understanding is firsthand. And that's why the occult is very, to me, I look at it as a very open and really a wonderful source, a wonderful repository of spiritual information. Now, you have to understand, of course, you don't want to believe what someone else has written about the occult or what their visions are necessarily. That's secondhand information. You want to go into those worlds yourself. You want to go into the inner dimensions of spirit and understand for yourself. That's where the gold is. So religion is a good starting point. I'm not against religion, and I know that religious people hear me talk about the occult and they think, well, gosh, this guy's just into devil worship. It couldn't be further from the truth. And I feel like religion serves most people well for their entire lives, but at the end of the day, we're talking about secondhand knowledge of God. Okay, and it certainly doesn't, it doesn't appeal to everyone to go to try to explore your own inner dimensions. There's nothing satanic about it. There's nothing evil about it. But there's nothing to preclude you from having a personal relationship with God or exploring your own inner spirit. Okay, and there are a growing number among us who seek a direct relationship with the divine. There is no man-made religion which can honestly prohibit your personal relationship with the Creator in whatever form that may take for you. Now, having some structure is important, and so in this sense, religion is very helpful. However, it's just and this is just my interpretation, this is my opinion, and for those that are part of a religion, a part of a community, that's a very important thing, and I'm not denigrating that at all. But I can only speak my own truth. I can only speak from my own interpretation and my own experience. And so, I should say that to me, and I'm only saying to me, it feels like religion is just kind of painting by the numbers. It's rather mechanical, since it involves someone else telling me how I should think about this or that verse in the Bible, for example, what I should do, that sort of thing. And again, this is just my interpretation only. So I think of religion in general as a business. It's a very needed business. Trust me. I'm not trying to denigrate it, but I think of religion as a business which fulfills an important need for the human spirit. However, just as a business can build you a house, you can choose to build your own house if you want to. However, as religions will rightfully point out, the DIY route to building a house is going to be a lot more difficult and challenging. And there's going to be a lot of potential problems along the way, and you could go down the wrong path, 100%. But also the rewards will be far greater as well. That is, if you can manage to build a house on a firm foundation that doesn't fall down. Religion can provide that foundation for a lot of people, okay? Now, we all need morality, at least in my estimation. We need discipline and a sense of belonging in order to build that foundation, okay? A sense of belonging to each other, some sense of community. And so in this sense, you can think of the occult as it's been described in certain practices as a sort of, as an arts and crafts fair that just sits outside of the gate of your own path to discovery. So there's all of this stuff that's been said and written and all sorts of media about the occult. And so you can think of all of that material that exists as sort of like an arts and crafts fair. But at the end of that arts and crafts fair that you're walking around and checking stuff out, there's this gate. And that's a gate that only you can pass through. And that is the gate, of course, that's the portal to your own understanding. And there's a point where, what I have to say or what anyone else has to say that you consider to be an authority can only take you so far, but you have to make the next step sort of thing. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Now, your own relationship, your own understanding is yours. You're free to, you can express that to others, you can write about it, etc. But again, when we're entering this realm of the incomprehensible, of the supernal realms, the words we can use to describe it are limited, and they're only approximations. So don't get hung up on meaning. Don't get hung up on the word occult and all of the baggage that comes along with it. It's just that. It's just someone else's opinion you're dragging around within your own mind. So don't let people rent space in your head for free, okay? As the old saying goes. So you can look at entering into your own understanding or your own practices. This, you have this experience which may be interpreted by you in a certain way, and but it's never going to be fully. It's never going to be fully articulated in words to begin with. So just knowing that something is there is what is important. And honoring this sense within yourself, within your own being, that you are in some mysterious way connected to the all in a very real yet mysterious and undefinable way.